One of the things that has made the Yellowstone franchise so special is its many spin-offs. But what do we know about the 1883 spin-off? Don't forget that 1883 was there to help start the story of the Duttons, as their ancestors moved to the spot in Montana where they now have their massive ranch in the present and are still fighting for it going into Season 5. But apparently, 1883 still has another story to tell through the tale of Bass Reeves, the cowboy who is trying to change things in older times. And it's not going to be easy. So, what do we know about the tale he is going to tell? Setting it up. Now that Elsa Dutton's tale of heroics has come to an end, the next installment of Paramount's Yellowstone spin-off, 1883, will move on to develop the storyline of one Bass Reeves, the first black U.S. Marshal in the West. As a marshal, Reeves did plenty of gunslinging. He arrested more than 3,000 criminals and killed 14 people in self-defense. So, it sounds like we're in for a wild ride with 1883, the Bass Reeves story. Reeves' connection to the Duttons and their journey in 1883 is unclear, especially given how 1883 ended. The show followed James, Tim McGraw, and Margaret, Faith Hill, Dutton on their journey west. They were originally heading to Oregon, but their plans changed when tragedy forced them to settle in Montana instead. Their younger son John would go on to be the grandfather of Yellowstone's John Dutton, Kevin Costner. The series about Reeves was originally announced in 2021 as a separate series for Taylor Sheridan and star and producer David Oyelowo, but now it's been absorbed into the Yellowstone universe. But who is Bass Reeves? Reeves is one of the most legendary figures of the Old West, and it's likely you've heard his name before. He has shown up as a character on Winona Earp and Legends of Tomorrow, and was referenced on Watchmen and Justified. He's thought to be the inspiration for the Lone Ranger, and was rumored to have never been injured during any of the arrests he made, despite dealing with dangerous criminals. He even had to arrest his own son, Benny, when Benny murdered his wife. Reeves was a former slave who was recruited to join the U.S. Marshals in 1875. He served in West Arkansas until 1893, so that's where he would have been in 1883. Reeves retired from law enforcement in 1909 and died in 1910. Given that time in and of itself is one of the more important elements of the Yellowstone spin-offs, we can't say for certain just how long the show is going to stay in 1883, as that would limit how much of Bass Reeves' life we would get to see. But you never know. Sometimes a name is just a name, and this franchise has already shown that it can change the titles of their shows if they feel it works for them. How 1883 helps make the tone of its spin-off. 1883 also addressed race and gender in a way that Yellowstone is yet to do. It gave center stage to Elsa, a teenage girl who constantly walked the line between societal expectations and her own heart, and also featured LaMonica Garrett as Thomas, a Pinkerton agent and former slave who had spent most of his life trying to find a place to belong in a harsh world. Elsa and Thomas, like most of the men and women on the show, ended up on parallel opposite journeys. While she toughened up, he softened, and both ended up being saved, in a way, by their open hearts. Both found love out on the plains, and both of their lives were changed by that experience. Garrett told TV Guide that this was not lost on the actors, and they found it refreshing to see that 1883 was heading in a different direction than many other westerns and allowing the men to cry when they needed to. When people see it in the beginning, they think it's like any other western, where the women are doing their thing and the men are spitting and they're gruff. And then you start watching more and more episodes and going, "Wait a minute, that's new," he said. "It's something you might not know you needed, and you might not know why you're really gravitating towards this show. And it's not too much where it's like we're doing it for the sake of being different. You see it gradually building." Garrett loved that he didn't know where Thomas's story was going, even though Thomas's backstory was familiar to a lot of other black cowboys. He was a former slave who fought in the Civil War, and after the Emancipation Proclamation, he moved to Texas because there was more of an equality amongst cowboys and slaves. They were all in fields and handling horses, and cowboy culture wasn't so much black or white. even though there was still racial tension. Your worth was based around how well you can handle yourself in the field. That was true for Thomas. But what set him apart from many other black cowboys was the fact that he was working closely with a white man and having to shoot other white men in his work as a Pinkerton agent. Plus, he got the girl. Thomas's adorably awkward and uncontroversial romance with widow Naomi, Gradiela Brancusi, a Roma immigrant, was an unexpected bright spot on a relatively bleak show, and helped create a 360 character who breathed new life into the idea of a black cowboy in the 1800s. For black actors, we didn't get a lot of shots to tell these stories. So for me, this is my one shot to get it right. So the preparation I put into it was like, don't mess this up because a lot of people are looking at this, he said. Thomas ended 1883 with a bright new future ahead of him as he and Naomi and her 2 children began their own settlement. There's no word yet on whether Thomas will make an appearance in 1883, the Bass Reeves story, but it won't be surprising if he does. His tale is the perfect segue into the story of Reeves, the legendary first black deputy U.S. Marshal, a man known for making thousands of arrests and never being injured. Perhaps he could use a friend or colleague like Thomas with his newfound vulnerability. The real thing to note here is that if 1883 was willing to talk about some of these issues and showcase the vulnerability of certain kinds of characters, then the Bass Reeves story is no doubt going to focus on that at least in part, especially given the legend of the man and how people of the time likely weren't too appreciative of all that he was doing. Cast and release date. David Oyelowo is the only announced cast member so far, and will star as Reeves. He is currently 46, and Reeves would have been about 45 in 1883. No release date has been announced for the series yet, but the rest of the Yellowstone extended universe returns in the fall. Season 5 of Yellowstone will premiere November 13th on Paramount Network, and Prequel 1923, starring Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren, will debut in December on Paramount+. Given that we don't even know when the series is filming or how long it'll be, it might be that we have to wait a while for news on this front. Plus, there are so many other spin-offs going on that they might be trying to knock one off before starting up on another. That's not to say that this is going to get put on the back burner, a topic that is on the forefront of things, but patience might be the key thing here. Opening up new stories. The other thing that the Bass Reeves stories might just be a starting trend for is doing stories of characters and potentially of places that aren't immediately connected to the line of Duttons. Everything from 1883 to 4 Sixes are all connected to it in one form or another. But the Bass Reeves story is a key difference maker, as they might just take the time periods and figure out how to tell the stories of more legendary figures like Reeves in their universe. If it works out, you just might see more like it down the line. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at 1883's spin-off and what the Bass Reeves story is shaping up to be like? Do you think you'll tune in to the show when it arrives? Or do you think that you'll wait to see what it's like in terms of critical reviews before you tune into it? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on the channel.